A good contract is worth its weight in gold. Are you a creative entrepreneur who contracts your services to others? Well, listen up, because this is for you. The Smithers Law Group has created 14 master contracts specifically for creative entrepreneurs. These contracts are industry specific, they're fully customizable, and you only pay a one-time fee. This is so much better and more affordable than speaking with an attorney who's going to charge you an hourly consultation fee, and it's so much more secure than just Googling up your contract and hoping for the best. Find your fully customizable and industry-specific contract at stulawgroup.com. Search for the contract link. And don't forget to tell them that I sent you. Repeat after me. I bring more than diversity. I bring irreplaceable perspectives. Hey friends, my name is Whitney, and I'm the host of Impostrix podcast, the show that validates professionals of color navigating imposter syndrome and racial toxicity in their career. Join us and be validated. You got this. Welcome back to Impostrix podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Lee, and I'm joined today by Difernt. She is an author and a motivational speaker, and today we're going to be talking about all things her experience and mental health. So I'm looking forward to getting to this conversation. Before we go further, though, I'm going to have Difernt introduce herself and share with us the identities that she wants us to know as we go into this conversation.
Yes. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody out there watching. What's up, Whitney? Thank you guys so much for having me. Yes, my name is Difernt, spelled Difernt. As the lovely host stated, I'm an author. I'm more than that. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a travel influencer, a YouTuber, as well as I'm a small-time business owner. I own my own business, Third Eye Entertainment, LLC, a business that strives to bring social awareness to society through our products and services in which we educate, inspire, and entertain you guys all at once. So again, big shout out to Miss Whitney for having me. Happy to be here, ready to share my story with you all and just talk about mental health and other good things. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm so Difernt and I were having just like a pre-recording conversation, and just in that conversation, I've learned so much already, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you during this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I want to start off just by asking you. I mean, you said a lot there in terms of what you do and who you are, and I want to know like what your mission is, like what drives you to do all of these things.
Well, I would have to say it would come from, my past and where I came from, understanding that what I came from and what I went through, it put in perspective of where it is that I wanted to go in life. And I guess getting into my background, I'm from Houston, Texas. And so I grew up here, and I had a pretty good childhood up until the time I was around 11 years old. And at that time, me and my family, we ended up homeless and stayed that way for about 3 years, to where we would live literally pillow to post. You name it, we slept at, parks, cars, shelters, we slept at a bus stop, and even at one point slept at a crack house, and it stayed this way for about 3 years until I was 14 years old, and then I was secretly placed in foster care by a relative, and the rest of my family member, they didn't know where I was. They thought I was with that person until they told them where they had put me. Within those 6 months, I tried my hardest coming home, until I found out through another foster kid that if you age out in the state of Texas, they would pay for your tuition to college. And so right then and there, a light bulb went out in my head, and I just had to decide to use my street smarts to elevate my book smarts. That was the only way I seen myself, getting out of my situation. And so I made that harsh decision to stay in foster care for the next 4 years so that I would have a full ride to college. And that's just what I did. And that was, a trial and tribulative story in itself, being shuffled from foster home to foster home in different schools, all within a span of 4 years. But in the end, what God, he used in my life that started as, trials and tribulation. It turned into triumphs. I graduated from high school, ended up going to college, to Sam Houston State University, and I graduated from there. Even in that experience, I got to do so many things. I traveled abroad to South Korea and got to travel to 8 different other countries. And that's where my travel
In
bug was.
school?
Yeah, that's where it was, planning.
Wow.
And even then, when I came back, I started my own student organization titled Pay It Forward, where, we would go to different high schools speaking about the importance of education. And there, I would share my testimony. And so, and in the end, kids would come up to me and tell me, oh, hey, I'm going through the same thing. Or I didn't know, the state of Texas would, pay for my tuition. So I'm going to go to college. And so I just realized there that I had a much bigger purpose in my life, and there was things that I had to do. And so I ended up graduating with my degree in international business. I had 2 minors in, business communication and economics. I also, a few years later, got my master's degree in entrepreneurship. Now I'm a real estate agent. I do insurance. I've traveled up to just about 50 countries. And so in the end, although my life started out, with trials and tribulations, going to end in triumph. And even with that being said, Whitney, all those notches and accomplishments under my belt, it did mean a thing when it came to, my mental health and dealing with my past and the traumatic things that I had been through and was still going through at that time when I decided to get my mental health in check. Coming up in a chaotic environment before I got into foster care, seeing chaotic things and just being in, around it, it was normal to me. And so when I got placed in foster care, I was actually placed in good homes, and they were all Black foster families that had went to college, had nice houses. And so
Wow.
there was a culture shock within my culture. I'd never seen that before. I didn't know that Black people go to college. Before I had seen that, I didn't know that we were able and worthy of living a good life until I seen that. And so that was also one of the reasons why I made the decision to stick it out in foster care as opposed to going back to my previous situation. And
And can I ask you a question?
yes.
But so you had talked about how you learned that Texas, the state of Texas, would pay
Mm-hmm.
for your education if you aged out of foster care,
Yes.
and that you had made a decision at that point when you learned that you were just going to stick it out. You saw education as a way to kind of break whatever cycle. And I think these are my words, not your words. So correct me if I'm wrong. And do something. Do something. I'm curious to ask about how did you identify education as a tool?
It was my only tool, if you will, because given the physical features of myself, I'm only 5'1", so I'm not tall as Brittany Griner or anything. So I don't do basketball or volleyball. I'm not fit to be a model. If you all are shaped to be a model, as such back in the day. Now things have changed and the world is more inclusive. Including with body types. But back in the day, that wasn't an option for me, and so the only way I see my way of getting up out of my situation was education. And I also want to know that me making that decision to stay in foster care didn't, cut my family off. I still had contact with them and was
Okay.
able to, at one point when I was older, I think when I was 16, I was able to go on, weekend visits with them and just catch
Oh,
the bus to
good.
them. And so I still have contact with my family, even while in foster care, but still was, in the system, so to speak. Grown up as a kid that loved to learn and be in school because it got me out of my chaotic environment. I spent a lot of time in the library because of what was going on at home and staying at school and doing summer school even when I didn't have to. It's because it took away some of that chaotic environment that I was in. And so, but like I said, going through this, even as a preteen, even with dealing with foster care, there were things and issues dealing there. It wasn't all sweet, even though I made that decision. And
Right. Yeah.
at the end, I got something out of it. I still had a price to pay, and being shuffled around. One point staying in the house with 12 girls, and it was chaotic. It was a lot of things that go on in foster care that people put out there, and most of the time it is true. Luckily, I didn't get caught up in some of the things that kids in the system go down. And
Yeah.
so that's why I just say I feel like, my life had a purpose. It was something I was meant for greater things. There was just no way that all that, trials and tribulations I was going through in my time in life, it didn't mean that it was supposed to come to full circle and I was supposed to share my story with people. But before I could share my story and help others, I had to help myself. And so, as I stated, even when I got all these accomplishments under my belt, I still had issues going on internally to where, like I said, coming up in a chaotic environment, it was normal for me. So when I got placed in foster care and in a different, environment, in a paradigm shift, if you will, it was all new to me. It was, to me, too good to be true. I had it in my head that, nothing good lasts forever, as well as, I'm the captain of my ship. I decide where to navigate and when it's time to seek it. And so what, I would naturally grow to do when I was in a situation that I felt was too good for me or it wasn't going to last, before they get to me, I'd rather get to them. So what I would do is
Yes.
self-sabotage and mix it
Yes.
up for some reason. I become, unruly and very off-putting to others, so to where it would have me push people away. And so, getting kicked out of foster homes, getting shuffled around to different schools and, making unnecessary enemies. That's just what it became, all of the frustrations. And mind you, I'm still a kid. I'm still going through, the motions of, teens and then learning myself. And so add that into the mix and, look what you got. And so that attitude and that behavior and those character traits, followed me all throughout my adulthood, all into college, and to where even when I graduated, I was still, dealing with those demons, to where now career wise, here I am still doing those self-sabotaging ways, to where there was one incident where I had a meeting with somebody that was well connected, and to where it would have just took me from the back to the front, if you will. But however, having these negative thoughts in the back of my head telling me they're only taking pity on you because you're in foster care, or they don't like you, you too country, you too ghetto, you talk too fast. And so all those thoughts got into me, and to where I purposely showed up late to that meeting, and to where it left a
Wow.
sour taste in that person's mouth. And all throughout the years afterwards, several years later, here I am still dwelling on that and thinking back, man, wow, why did I do that? Self-loathing. And so one point I had to look myself in the mirror and face that ugly truth that whatever I went through in my past, it wasn't my fault. It was out of my control. But somehow, some way, as an adult today and now, right here in this presence, it's on me to deal with. It's my problem and my issue to fix. And so doing that, I just dismissed that notion that Black people don't do therapy. And this girl, Black girl right here, decided to spread a little Black girl magic and go take her butt to some therapy and get herself together and trying to be consistent with it. I'm not perfect. And at times, there were times where I had little dips, but knowing the power of going to therapy and getting your mental health in check is what led to me writing my book.
Hey, y'all. So let's switch gears for just a minute. We talk so much about empowerment of folks of color on this show. And now I want to take a second to talk about our legacy. It's so important that as we're out here doing our thing and making that money and trying to be the people that we want to be for our communities and families, that we get our estate plan together. And I know estate planning can be overwhelming. We've got your back. Our team is here to guide you every step of the way. Wills for the People is an estate planning practice that prioritizes creating and advancing generational wealth, particularly within families of color and middle-class families. This is because it's so important that we just get started. So, what do you want your legacy to be? And what steps have you taken to ensure that that happens? Take those steps with Wills for the People, where intentional planning meets transformative results. Visit our website for your free consultation at willsforthepeoplega.com. Mention Impostrix Podcast and we'll give you 10% off of your package. All right, I'll see you over there. Let's get back to the show. I can just relate so much with self-sabotage because I am someone, we have very different backgrounds. I grew up in a middle-class family with stability, lived in one home my entire childhood. I was given a lot of the things that I needed, but did so much self-sabotaging to the point where I went to 3 different middle schools and got suspended on like the second to last day of school one year in 7th grade because I got into a fight. And it's like, who does this? Why? I can just think of so many times my academic performance. Like, part of me, I'm not a classroom learner. So there's that. But also just this pressure of being somebody for me made me, I think, subconsciously want to like rebel against that idea, and in a way that was not constructive. And you were talking about how you saw the patterns of self-sabotage follow you even like through school. And I'm curious, and maybe this is where therapy helped you, but I'm curious as to like how you got out of that self-sabotage state, because the other thing that I'm hearing around self-sabotage from what you were sharing was that it was tied to this imposter syndrome of like, well, I shouldn't be here anyways. This space isn't where I belong, for whatever reason. And so let me just mess this up before somebody else can, before somebody else can like deny me this opportunity or pull the rug out from under me.
Yep.
It's like this, that sounds like survival for you. And I think some of that might be your background, but I think that so much of our backgrounds as folks of color is, I want to be in control of what I do and what I don't do. And so that means that if I think this opportunity is too good for me, or if I think, this is too good to be true, then I'm going to remove myself from the situation so that I don't have to feel that pain of denial or that fear of the other shoe dropping. I'm just going to take care of that right now.
Yes.
So I love to hear like what did get you through that mentality of that you do need to self-sabotage as a way of survival.
And that's funny that you mentioned survival, because that's exactly what it was for me. That was just survival mode. The best way, coming up in the streets and literally, like I said, seeing, sleeping from pillow to post and at bus stops and shelters and things, you would see things that an 11-year-old child, 12-year-old child shouldn't have seen. And mind you, I'm a girl coming up. I was already developed at the age of 10. And so, walking to school or catching the bus, and at times, there would actually be, grown men walking up to me or driving up to me and approaching me in an inappropriate manner and, asking me things and questions. There was one incident to where I was walking to school and there was a guy in the pickup truck and he could clearly see that I was a kid or a child. And, even though I had, breasts and everything, I was, a young girl and I was on my way to school and they just kept asking me, hey, baby girl, you need a ride? You need a ride? You want to get in? And in that point, in that mind frame right there, that's when I think that survival mode clicked for me. And just because I said to myself, if this man tried to take me, I'm going to go out swinging. So what I did was I made a beeline to the store and I bought one of those little disposable switchblades to where you can just toss or whatever. And from then on that day, I would start doing that. I would, have a little switchblade to carry with me. And before I entered into the school, I would just put it in a safe place because I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. And it definitely, didn't want to bring a weapon into school. I was smart enough to realize, don't go all the way with it. Just carry yourself enough protection to protect you while you're in these situations. And it just made me realize I have to be in survival mode at all times. And so when I would leave school, I would pick it right back up and just carry it home with me for protection. And so it was issues like that and things like that that I went through that molded that survival mode in way. And like I said, once I came out of it and was done with it, and I had that, and I was stuck in that ways. Mind you, this is from 11 to 18. This is 7 years of having that mindset. That's an old and hard habit that's going to be hard to break, and it just doesn't happen in one day. When you make that decision to get your mental health in check, you have to commit to it. It's not just going to be cleared up in one session or 2 sessions. You're going to have to go back consistently, set a schedule, even if it's twice a year or 3, 4, every quarter of the year you go. You have to really be ready and committed to getting your mental health in check and going into the dark places to where you can start to heal. And that comes from getting real within yourself and freeing yourself from that mental bondage first off, and then, letting go of what others did to you and understanding and realizing, like I said, what you went through or what I went through, what we all have gone through in our past. It may or may not have been our fault. It was out of our control, but it's on us to deal with and fix, because we're the ones that's going to sleep at night, weighing heavy on our heads, and waking up in the morning feeling sad or mad because of what somebody else has done to us. We can't expect that person that's done us harm or that broken our hearts to mend our hearts, because they've moved on to the next victim. So it's on us to take back, like I said, the powers in our rings. We're the captain of our own ship. You decide whether to navigate your ship in the waters, And so you have to make that decision to where you're going to get yourself together and realize your full potential, what you have to offer into this world. And once you do that, then, like I said, my motto is manifest, plan, prepare. When I say manifest, that means, removing all the negative thoughts in your mind and replacing it with positive and affirmations, and then moving on to the planning part, where you write it out on paper, write out plans, not just one strategy, but two strategies, an exit strategy. You can't plan for the unknown, but you can expect and be prepared that it's going to come to you, and know and realize that whatever trial and tribulation that you're going to face, it too shall pass, and you will get through it. And so when you move on to the preparation side of it, when I say prepare, I don't mean just prepare externally. I mean internally, fixing yourself from the inside out, getting your mental health in check, your physical health, your financial house in order, even, mending broken bridges or cutting people off who means well in life. So that way, whatever it is that you're manifesting and planning for, when it comes to you, you can be prepared for it. You would know how to handle it. That's what I did in my past. When I had good things coming my way, I didn't know how to handle it. I wasn't prepared for it. So that is why I would self-sabotage. And so now how I approach things is that I manifest them, I plan for them, and I prepare for them. So when it comes to me, I will be prepared and know how to handle it. I will be appreciative and grateful for it, and I wouldn't squander it. And I also just want to take this time, since we're on the topic of mental health, reach out to anybody out there that's listening. Please know that whatever trial and tribulation that you're going through, being depression, bullying, feeling suicidal, anxiety attacks, please know that it is okay to not be okay, but don't ever sit there and not be okay. Go get help. Go do whatever it is that you have to do that keeps your mental health in check and keep you from not going off the deep end and possibly taking anybody with you. That's one thing I realized as well. Hurt people hurt people. And so
hurt people.
And yes,
Yes.
ma'am. And so for those out there that may need these mental health resources or know somebody that does, please feel free to share it with them. The crisis hotline number is 1-800-273-8255, or you can call or text 988, or you can text 741-741. And for those that would prefer, you guys can go online and visit mentalhealthishealth.us, or you can check out 988lifeline.org. And for those that are outside of the U.S. and that's watching your girls or listening to your girls' podcast, you guys can visit incounseling.com. That is spelled ENCOUNSELING.com. And remember, you guys, although I am giving you these mental health resources, remember, it's on you to do your own homework and your own research and find what works best for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the captain of your own ship, and you decide where to navigate the waters. And lastly, as I said before, whatever trial and tribulation that you are going through in your life, please remember that this too shall pass. So going off the deep end is not an option. It's not worth it. So don't do it. All right.
And so first of all, I didn't tell her to say all this, y'all.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Like I said, I advocate for mental health everywhere I go.
Yes.
Everywhere I go. Because it will save somebody's
this.
life. Trust me. Maybe not now when they're watching it, but some years down the road, somebody's listening to your podcast and they hear this message and it'll save their lives. And so I truly and firmly believe in that. And everywhere I go, and I don't get paid. I'm not a spokesperson or anything, but I just know sharing that information, it can save somebody's life down the line.
And that's the truth. Like that's the actual truth. And I have dealt with surviving sexual trauma. At 11, everything changed.
Yeah.
That's when therapy started for me. You had said something about like, essentially what I heard was you got to show up like to actually do the work. And that it can't just be a one-time thing. And so, I've had experiences where I'll be in therapy for years without actually being honest in therapy or without actually like doing doing the things, taking the advice, taking the tips and the tools from my therapist and then applying them in my life. And then I'm sitting here wondering why I'm still depressed or why I'm still anxious. I want to share with people that therapy is a tool, but there's also, sometimes we need medication.
Yes.
Sometimes we need like fresh air. Sometimes we need food in our bodies. We need sustenance. So I think this idea of mental health and caring for our mental health, it's more than just, doing one or two things. We all need to figure out for ourselves, like what we need to do to take care of our mental health, because it does. For me, if I'm depressed, then it affects every area of my life. It affects how I show up for work. It affects how I show up for my family and for my friends. It affects what kind of mother that I'm going to be that day. And so there are days where I need to take it one day at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And determine like what it is that I need to do today to take care of myself.
Definitely.
So I'm so appreciative of just, this conversation, that caring for our mental health can look so different, but it does require action on our end. One other resource that I want to share is for folks who have employee assistance programs available to them. Many companies do provide employee assistance programs, and through those programs, you can get free counseling. And these programs are really designed to help somebody through like a specific event that's happening. But you can always stay with your therapist if you have insurance, or some therapists will do sliding scales if you can't afford that. And if you have no money, then again, these resources that Difernt has listed out for us, I'll put them in the show notes, but these are all free resources for people who are dealing with like acute issues. If you're dealing with suicidal ideation, or if you're dealing with the thought of wanting to do self-harm, or if you're dealing with maybe addiction, that's my story as well. I am an alcoholic in long-term recovery. And there are sometimes when we're not able to care for ourselves in ways that are healthy for us, we use these survival mechanisms to just get through. And sometimes those survival mechanisms hurt us more than they help us. And that can be drugs and alcohol. That can be how we use or don't use food. That can be isolation. That can look like a lot of things. And so at the point where you're noticing, listeners, that the tool that you're using to just survive in life today is no longer working, hopefully before you get to that point, you can find the courage and the strength to reach out to somebody, a mental health professional, or even a friend or a family member, just to say that you need help. But also, you do have resources out there. And so again, I'll post those below, and you all be able to have access to that. So I'm grateful, Difernt, for you bringing that up.
Oh, yes, most definitely. You're welcome. No worries.
Yeah.
Like I say, everywhere I go, any chance I get, and definitely being being a month of mental health awareness and maternity mental health awareness as well. Like I said, with Third Eye Entertainment, that's, we talk about social issues, or we bring social awareness, to society through these issues. And definitely when it comes to mental health, that's at the top of the tier. And so, thank you again for having me and giving me this opportunity to express and share my story and advocate for mental health awareness, especially, in the Black community, our community, with our culture. Most of us, not all of us, have come up with that notion, like myself, that Black people don't do therapy, or what goes on in this house stays in this house, so we're not allowed to talk about it. Or if we do, our family members or people that we think that should love us and support us through those trying times, they get upset or mad at us for expressing how we feel, or just sharing our story and testimony. Even with me sharing my testimony and some of the things that I've gone through in life, I faced some backlashes. So for anybody out there, understanding that when it comes to facing your ugly truth, at times it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be rough and ragged for you. But just know that, what doesn't break you will make you. And going through those dark places is how you can heal, and shedding light in that dark area. So, and never let anybody make you feel that you should dim your light when it comes to healing yourself. And so that's
Absolutely.
also, what I've gone through
Absolutely.
as well. People get mad at me for getting my mental health in check. So that's how you're doing the right thing.
And what I'm thinking too is like boundaries. Like this is what happens when we have
Yep.
boundaries. In many of our families of origin and in our, the friends circle that we might have grown up
Mm-hmm.
with, the people that maybe we were surviving together, now all of a sudden we want to take care of our mental health. And that might mean having boundaries with these people
Mm-hmm.
or ending or interrupting these dynamics that we're so used to, but that are dysfunctional and that are causing our mental health to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that comes with risk. That might mean not talking to somebody that has been a huge part of our life
Mm-hmm.
for since before we can remember. That might mean taking a break from friends or family members. And as difficult as that is, sometimes this is like the necessary struggle that we have to walk through in order to come out the other side okay
Yeah.
and better, than
Yeah.
okay. And if we do need to set these boundaries, sometimes these boundaries are forever, but sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes these boundaries are just to be able to give us space to be able to heal or create a better idea of how the relationship can move forward. And then we can rejoin each other. So I'd love to hear about your book.
Yes.
Tell us
Yes.
about your
Yes.
book because I'm so fascinated by everything that I know about this book. But
Okay.
I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Awesome. Okay, so my book, What If? A Controversial Paradigm Shift, is a book that's written to encourage and inform thought provoking conversations about injustice and systemic racism in America. And I've done this through graphic and provocative illustrations. So be advised that it's intended for a mature audience. It does come with a sensitive content little stamp on it. And so if you can't take this type of heat, I usually tell people don't come to the kitchen, but now I'm telling them to come on in the kitchen, just get your little fire blanket, you'll be okay. Because that's the point of it all is to have these conversations that'll need to be
She
had.
said a fire
Yeah, get
blanket.
your little fire blanket. You might get a little singe, but you'll be okay. That's the point of it all. We need to have these conversations that are often, swept under the rug when it comes to racial injustice in America. But going back to how it got started, like I said, when it came to getting my mental health in check and speaking with my therapist, they encouraged me to get back into some of the hobbies that I did that got me through, foster care, which was journaling and, writing. And that's also something else I'm big on when it comes to, I like to journal a lot and do a lot of prayer, meditation, and work on chakra healing. And so this all started in 2020. Before when the pandemic happened, stuck in the house, can't go anywhere. Beforehand, I was traveling all over the world, been to just about 50 countries. And, the pandemic happens, we're stuck in the house, can't go anywhere. So it feeds into my depression. Like I said, I had just started to, get my mental health in check and started going to therapy. And May 25th, 2020 happens, the day George Floyd dies. And so, and mind you, he's from Houston and so am I. And so he's from Third Ward and I'm from Fifth Ward. The neighborhoods are literally right next to each other. And so when they were having the protest or his protest, I wanted to get involved and I wanted my voice to be heard. However, when it came down to it, even going to his funeral, I was planning on going to pay my respects to him. I couldn't. It wasn't that I got cold feet or, chickened out. What I thought about it was, if I want my voice to be heard, I want it heard long after the protest is over, long after I'm gone. So going home, praying and meditating and asking God, what is it that I can do to, shed light on this issue and have my voice being heard, something that's going to catch people's attention, make them think, and as well as put me on the map. That's going to take me from the back to the front. And this is what he showed me little by little. I would have little dreams or conversations with people and I would ask the question, what if? I have it set up in 4 main paradigm shifts: historical, political, precedent, and then we have hypothetical. And so, for instance, when I set up in the historical wise, I asked the question, what if in 1619 Africans started dealing in illegal slave trading, whereas they kidnapped millions of English men, women, and children and brought them on slave ships in America? And then I have the provocative illustrations showing the race role reversal that has, white slaves in shackles and chains and being beaten by black slave owners and slave masters. And you see them, jumping from ships like our people did. And so in this book, it talks about historical and deaths that have occurred in America in the Black community. And so nothing in this book, I say fiction, nonfiction, because these events are true. They have occurred in our history. It's just a race war reversal. It didn't happen to the white folks as it did to us. And so I just basically just changed the skin tone. And so doing so, it is my thought that, when we have these conversations or, like this, that pushes the envelope to make a person think or share their opinion, then that's how other people get involved with sharing their opinions. And before you know it, you're having these conversations that we never really thought that we'd be talking about. And so that is why I've chosen the controversial route. I even have the word controversial in the title. I've noticed that a lot of people, controversy gets their attention. They love it. They flock to it. And so now that I use that controversial route to get you to come and see about the book, listen up to what it is that I'm really telling you about. It's simply a book that's meant to make you think and have conversations that are thought provoking and hopefully brings forth change that we need. I'm well aware that change doesn't happen overnight, Whitney, and it doesn't happen with just one person, complaining and moaning about a situation. It takes, a group of people coming together over time. And, for me, quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about systemic racism. I want to talk about systemic change. And with this book, it's not only just about, like I said, rubbing people the wrong way. Those that are mature enough to make it through the first main paradigms, through the hypothetical, you will see I'm talking about unity, coming together and talking about accountability, acknowledgement, and coming up with ways that we can bring forth systemic change for the next generation. What if this is the generation that plants the seed for the next? And so that's why I'm doing my part and doing what I can. And even if it goes nowhere fast, nothing beats a failure but a try. And so at least I've done my part. It's my hope and prayer as well as manifestation that this book will ring the world's bell and wake people up and push forth and help bring forth that change that we need in this society. It's that you go where you celebrate it, not where you tolerate it. And so no matter who you are in life, what you about, what you out there promoting to the public, it's always going to be somebody out there that condones, what you want. And so you go where you celebrate it, not where you tolerate. So I know it's a lot of people out there, they may frown upon this book, but I know it's on the other side, it's going to be plenty of people out there that understand and feel where I'm coming from and understand that this book is not just about, pushing people, the wrong way. It's more than that. It is available on my website, differenceworld.net. Get your copy of my book. And I definitely appreciate all the love and support that I am getting.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, you said a couple of things there that I want to respond to. And the first is that change doesn't happen overnight, which no, it does not. However, I do think that change happens in these conversations. And I mean, you and I right now, we're kind of speaking to the choir. So I don't know that I'm going to go home and think of, or, go to sleep at night and feel like I'm changed because of this conversation. Although I do feel validated and affirmed, which I appreciate. But this morning I had breakfast with a white woman who is learning and internalizing more and more what we're talking about. And we spent half an hour at breakfast talking about the 1619 Project and how that opened her eyes. And she, in turn, goes and talks to her white friends about the 1619 Project and how it opens her eyes and how she wants to learn more and that type of thing. And so, I love this book because I think readers of the book will be challenged. And it's in that challenge that change can happen for the individual.
There you go.
And then once that happens for the individual, they can share it with others. And that can be just a conversation, or it can be multiple conversations. But I think encouraging people to have the conversation is what's important, because often we think of things like controversy and accountability as bad things. Our view of accountability is punishment. If I am being held accountable, it's that somebody is dragging me or telling me that I did something wrong, or somebody is punishing me because if I don't fall in line to whatever the mainstream wants me to think, then I'm in danger. Like my physical being is in danger, perhaps. My mental health is in danger, perhaps. I challenge us to start thinking about accountability as more of a calling in and a meeting each other on the bridge than a moment of punishment. And so for me, the images in your book made me uncomfortable.
Yes.
And they didn't make me uncomfortable because of the violence, because I've seen those images just with me being the person that, people that look like me being the people that are being violated. What made me uncomfortable is that it was white people that were being violated.
Exactly.
And that, as a Black woman to say that, it's very telling. I would feel more comfortable if those images just depicted actual history as opposed to the race reversal. And, it's so telling as to the white supremacy that we live with, even as people of color, to where, speaking for myself only, to where I feel more comfortable seeing folks of color being violated than white people being violated. When I should feel more outraged when I see somebody who looks like me being abused or violated. And so for me, that's one of the challenges that your book creates, is this really taking a step back to learn all of the ways in which I'm affected by the white supremacy and the white dominant culture that we experience, particularly here in the United States, but in other places as well. And so I'm interested to have conversations about this type of controversy. And I'd love to hear like what the feedback has been for you. Because all I can think is, well, that book ain't going to be sold in Florida.
Right. Oh, man. Okay. Well, it has been mixed reviews. The way it has some people feeling and thinking and cringing and even coming up with excuses. That was one of the other reasons as to why I wrote the book, is because I got tired of situations like this. When it happens, there's always an excuse as to, so for instance, when George Floyd died, we seen it all on video. The police officer had his knee in his neck for over 8 minutes. You have still in that group that refuses to acknowledge any type of wrongdoing on the police officer's behalf. It turned into George Floyd's fault automatically.
Right.
Oh, he was resistant. Oh, he was high. He was on fentanyl. He deserved it. And so it's people like that who often come up with excuses that want to justify it. That's what made me do it in a race role reversal way. And it holds the mirror up to their face. It asks the question, what if this was you and your people that this was happening to, or had happening to, or was still happening to? Would you find it justifiable then? Would it be okay then? And if not, why is it okay when it happens to Black people but not white people? I wrote the book in 2021, or I published it in 2021. So it's only been about 2 years since it's been out and spread the word. So when we unfortunately have to go to these next protests, use these illustrations and share with them, and ask the question, what if? And see what answer does it bring? How would it make them feel? And so that's the point of it all, Whitney, is just to get that conversation and get that ball rolling. And like I said, plant the seeds for the next generation. And even if it goes nowhere fast, nothing beats a failure but a try. And so that's another thing for me. Like, before I leave this earth, you actually know what my purpose is in life, is just to try to leave a positive mark. Even if it fades away, if it doesn't last long, at least I've tried. I don't want to leave this earth knowing that I've been blessed with all these gifts and talents from God, and this tremendous and triumphant testimony, and not share it with the world, and not try to help inspire somebody, even if it's just one person out there, just one. That's all I need. And so I feel that it'd be a job well done. And mind you, I'm not perfect. I'm still a work in progress. I have good days, I have bad days. And that's for anybody else out there that's feeling that they're destined for greatness in life. You have to go for it. And no matter how many downfalls and flaws you have about yourself, you love yourself and you forgive yourself and you forgive others, and you keep moving forward and moving on with life no matter what. And so that's just what this book has helped me do in starting my business. It keeps me occupied. And when it comes to dealing with my mental health, where I'm at with it, I'll be open and honest. I am grieving severely in 2021. It was the hardest year of my life. I lost 5 people back to back to back, including my mother, who died in my arms the day after Christmas. And so I also want to take this time to shout out my mother, Franchelle Shinover, and may she rest in peace. We just got through the second Mother's Day without her, and that was weighing in on my mental. And so what I had to do there was to stay occupied. Me and my nephew, we got out and did some things, and try to remember the good. And so that's what I mean when it comes to keeping your mental health in check. It's an everlasting thing. It's not just a one stop. And that's so right. Like I said, anybody going through any type of mental stress or anguish, please know that it's okay to not be okay, but don't ever sit there and not be okay. Me talking about it and sharing my story is one of the tools I use to keep my mental health in check. So thank you again, Whitney, for allowing me to share my testimony and story with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. I think, this has been a really impactful conversation for me. I'm really grateful for your vulnerability and for sharing with us kind of what you've been through and what you're doing with it. Because we can do something with adversity. And, we have a voice. Our voice matters. And the way that we use our voice can impact people that we don't even know and people that we don't even know that we're reaching. So I hope that our listeners today also took something from this conversation. I'm going to make sure to put all of Difernt's information in the show notes, including her website link where you can find her book. One thing that I want to ask folks to do this week, well, 2 things, and both of them are really from Difernt. And those are, if you are somebody that is experiencing a mental health crisis, or not even just a crisis, if you're somebody that has been living with a mental health infliction and you don't know what to do, then I encourage you to utilize one of the resources that Difernt listed for us, and get yourself some help, get on the path to starting to feel better. The second thing that Difernt said was, go to the room where you're celebrated and not where you're tolerated. Is that right?
Celebrated, not where you tolerated.
Thank you. Go where you're celebrated and not where you're tolerated. And I'm thinking about that for me today and my work life. I try and myself with colleagues that celebrate me, and it makes the world of difference. And so I would love for folks, as you go throughout your week this week, think about going to where you're celebrated and not where you're tolerated. And then think about how that makes you feel. Does it do you notice the difference? And if you're somebody that's unsatisfied with the situation that you're in, whether that's work or personal life, or mental health, your medical, if you're seeing a doctor and you don't feel like your doctor cares about you, then just consider that. Consider how you feel and consider whether or not changes need to be made.
I also want to note that when it comes to mental health, you can't use any excuse as when it comes to being committed to it. Don't let your finances be the reason why you don't get your mental health in check. There are other alternatives that you guys can get into that are free of charge, even when it means picking up a hobby and just talking with a family member or a friend. Do that. There are other options. So don't let money be the reason why you don't get your mental health in check. And again, remember, whatever you went through, it may or may not been your fault, may have not been in your control, but it's on you to fix. And if you know and realize that you have a problem and you don't want to get up and go and fix it, then it's on you. It's a lot of people out there that realize that, hey, they have issues, but don't want to get up and go and fix it. They're too prideful or too embarrassed or whatever the case may be. They know they have issues and a problem, but they don't want to get up and fix it. So you are part of the problem if that's the case.
Well, and and maybe I'll cut this later, but so one, there's risk. There's always risk to taking care of yourself. But my opinion, my personal opinion is that the risk to myself is greater than the risk of losing anything else outside of me if I'm not taking care of my mental health. But 2, sometimes there are some of us who have just so much going on that we have to prioritize our energy and where our energy is spent. And sometimes that might mean something that is still important gets put on the back burner. And I would just challenge folks that if you're feeling that you're too overwhelmed to address mental health or address physical health or address alcoholism or addiction or address that you're an under earner or you're unhappy in your job, whatever the thing is that you're putting off, hold yourself accountable to come back to it. And please come back to it before it's too late, before you're really suffering. Because I recognize that our capacity is only so large. And sometimes, like for me, this idea of even self-care or caring for my mental health or physical health is like an extra anxiety added on to everything else. And so don't let it be that. But you do have, I believe, and it sounds like Different believes as well, that we do have a responsibility to ourselves to take care of ourselves.
Yep. But again, I just want to thank you guys out there for listening. And again, go to my website, differentspoiled.net. Anybody out there that's looking for, motivational speakers, looking to do any type of collaborations, you can go there and book me. My book, What If? A Controversial Paradigm Shift, is available on my website. Be sure to get your copy, as well as check out my YouTube channel and my social media handles. Don't forget, whatever it is in life that you guys are feeling that you're destined for, you have to manifest, plan, and prepare for it, and it will surely come to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Different.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see y'all listeners next week. Take care. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. I hope that you got as much out of it as I did. Feel free to continue the conversation with us over on Facebook at the Impostrix Podcast Validating Space. We welcome all, and it's a space for us to validate each other as we work through work, race, and imposter syndrome. You can find out more about me or about the podcast at www.impostrixpodcast.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. Until next time, be validated.